today, the transgender panel. I'm very grateful that these guys have come out today. I'm going to introduce Anne Leland. She is the co-facilitator of the Charleston Area Transgender Support Group. She was named 2015 Volunteer of the Year by We Are Family and now sits on their board of directors. In 2017, the Alliance for Full Acceptance awarded her their Community Leadership Award. And I will let you take it from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out. I live in McClellanville, small fishing town. Some of you may have heard of it, with my wife of 21 years, Cindy. She's in the audience. I like to kayak. I like to cook. I cooked some roasted red pepper, tomatoes, and goat cheese soup this morning. And I work at Costco in Mount Pleasant. So that's basically my life story. Right? And I grew up in Charleston. I am a native Charlestonian.
Hey, my name is Arlen Berge, and I'm a trans male, 59 years old, and I found CATS back in the beginning of 2015 when I started my transition. And I live in West Ashley. I'm a physical therapist at St. Francis Hospital, and I've been there 24 years, way before my transition. So they were very accepting.
Hi, I'm Deidre Shear. I am a high school teacher for Dorchester District 2. I teach at Fort Dorchester High School. I'm a science teacher. I'm married to Ross. I taught domestically violent soldiers for the military before I became a high school teacher. And together with Ross, we have a transgender child that made her transition at the end of her 2nd grade year. And now she is a happy and healthy 7th grader.
Hi, I'm Ross, 22-year combat veteran. Been retired now for 10 years and are standing up and supporting our daughter through a lot of different things. We had to take on our school district. We went up and did talk before the Senate when they were talking about the bathroom bill and stuff like that. So we've been advocating as much as we can for her and everybody in this community.
That deserves a clap.
Thank you. We're going to open it up for questions. I will ask that the questions be respectful. If they're asked in an awkward manner, we will let you know the proper way to phrase it, because this is new to some of you. I accept that. We all accept that. And we're here to answer your questions and perhaps enlighten you a bit as to the transgender life experience. So ask away. Don't be shy. All right, I'll explain a little bit. For me, the earliest memory I have of knowing that I was in the wrong body, as it were, was at age 5, when I asked my mother if I could go as a princess for Halloween, which she let me do. I don't know why, but she did. First day of school, I dressed in my sister's clothes to go to school because I wanted to look my best. And my brother came in and made me change. I still haven't forgiven him for that. And I've always wondered what would happen in 1958 Mount Pleasant if I'd shown up for school like that. My parents sent me to boxing lessons, a few other things. They sent me to a psychiatrist who assured them it was just a phase. And so I spent my entire life in the closet, basically, knowing that I was different. When I got out of college, I went to work for the Post for the evening, for the News and Courier at the time. I would get off work at 2 in the morning, ride my bicycle home downtown Charleston, change clothes, and go out walking the deserted streets. I was convinced I was nothing but a cross-dresser, which I wasn't, but it was a convenient way of not admitting who I was. I have attempted suicide twice. The first time, before I could actually carry it out, a feeling came over me, and an inner voice said, just live your authentic life, be who you are. That was in 1996. So I came out, and I was happy. I was also unemployed. Being a carpenter in Charleston and being transgender are not really compatible. But in the brief 6 months that I was out before I went back into the closet for work, I attended a function at Rockville at the yacht club there. If you've ever been to the yacht club there, you know it's not really a yacht club, it's just a building. And a friend came up and said, I have someone I want you to meet. She introduced me to a petite Southern school teacher from McClellanville, and 8 months later we were married. I am convinced that if I had not come out in that brief period, that we never would have met and we never would have gotten married. So life, you know, takes its strange twists and turns, and we're really no different than y'all. We hurt, we cry, we go out to eat at nice restaurants sometimes, and sometimes at not so nice places. But I just want y'all to know that we exist, we are. We've always been. There are records going back thousands of years mentioning us. Some Native American tribes had upwards of 5 different genders. Because gender is a spectrum. It's not a binary. The binary means you have male and you have female, and it's fixed. You can't change that. But yet, we all know people, girls who are tomboys. You know, they don't fit, and gender is a social construct. You know, women wear this, men wear that. But did you know that high heels were first invented for men to wear? Think about that. It was to keep their clothes out of the mud on the dirt streets and sidewalks in France. And of course, women were forbidden at one point from wearing pants. Pink used to be a color for men because it was strong, vibrant. Blue was weak and for women, which says a lot about how our society perceives the two genders. So there are all kinds of terms that people throw out: gender fluid, gender queer. But just know that a person's gender is here. This is where your gender is. Your sex is between your legs. A person described it this way, that, basically that your sexual preference is different from gender, from sex, that your sexual preference is who you go to bed with. Your gender is who you go to bed as. You know, I'm lucky. I am one of the lucky few because I have a job where I can be out. I've had that job since July. In my past job, I was in the closet, kind of, sort of, not really, but my employer convinced himself that I was. I was at a preschool, and they were scared to death, private, and they were scared to death that the parents would withdraw their kids if they knew about me. Well, I quit the school, and within 2 weeks I'd gotten 50 friend requests from parents at the school. So they knew, you know, but it was a don't ask, don't tell type thing. And I guarantee you that if you don't think you know a transgender person, you do. Because we hide it very well. When I came out, friends of mine said, there's no way. You know, you can't be. I was a kayak guide. I had muscles about this big. And they said, no, you know, not you, but yes, me. So, does anybody have any questions? Don't be shy.
I have a question for the shears. I have a 7th grader, and I can't imagine the peer pressure and discomfort. And I'm wondering if your daughter stayed in her class, or did she have to start someplace else? How did that, did she have understanding friends? I mean, I know, like, this generation is so different from, they're so much more accepting than we were, or my parents were, for that matter.
Absolutely.
But I'm just curious how.
Initially, in second grade, they were in an area where they had their own bathroom in the classroom, and so yes, had understanding friends. Some kids would ask questions. The teacher was amazing and would say, it is what it is, you know. And like you said, kids are pretty, yeah, okay, it is what it is. There were things that would pop up that would cause some friction, like in the second grade classroom, separating lines by gender, or on the bus, separating lines by gender, or even columns, just different things that you don't think about that in early childhood classrooms they do. So we address those things, and the school remedied them for us. But she stayed in her classroom the entire time. The next year, we requested that she use the bathroom, the female bathroom, which she's female, so that's when we started to get into an argument with the school district. So we agreed that while we fought the school district, that she would use the restroom in the nurse's office and or the assistant principal's office for that year. Now, our fight took us well over a year, but we won. And after that, she went through the bathroom. We would have a couple of incidences. The only problems that we ran into was not in second, third, or fourth grade. It was her fifth grade year, after everything had been said and done and fine. That's when the kids started to get a bit cliquish. And you had a group of little, it was a group of little girls that would terrorize her and make her miserable. And we addressed it with the school several times. And it got to the point at the very end when we felt like, because the content was over, since I'm a teacher in the high school, you know, I know kind of how the schedule flows. So the content was over, so I went in and told them that she would be going homebound. They did not argue. They were grateful that they didn't, you know, and it was the last couple of weeks of school. Her new school, she enters into the 6th grade, it has been a dream. We've not had any more problems. So really it was just that 1 year that was really intolerable for anybody. She has a clique of friends. She, one of her best friends has a parent that's transgender, so I mean, they kind of all group together in like-minded. She goes to a school of the arts, so that also, I think, kind of helps. Although I've seen that bullying happens at any school, you know, they're middle schoolers. I don't know anybody in the room that remembers middle school as being the highlight of your education. So it gets better, but surprisingly, the guidance counselors have been wonderful. And I don't know if it's because they know Ross and I are right on top of them, or if it's just because kids are much better than adults about a lot of things. You have anything to add?
Well, we did a lot of things to help her and to alleviate some of the problems. We were able to do a legal name change, which then helped going to school and saying we want her name changed on all the rosters, everything, which was a pain because we ended up having to fight it because they said, no, that's the name that's going to be on her diploma.
The district said, they said it's attached to that number unless you have a legal name change. And I said, well, then show me the state educational guidelines, the law that says that any child has to bring in a birth certificate or a social security card or any other identification to register for school, because I know it didn't exist. You have lots of kids in situations that don't have that paperwork. That's the reason it's not a state law, and they couldn't do it.
And kids are allowed to put their preferred name. You know, you may be Richard, but everybody knows you as Rick. So they'll put Rick on that, but they would not change her name. So we finally got them to do that, but it was little things that tore her heart up.
Right.
When she had perfect attendance for the first month of school, or the first quarter. And they put the names out in the hallway, while they put her dead name on that board. And then somebody said, "Do you know them?" And she's like, "No."
I'm gonna tell you, the kid
She
is so
copes.
fast on her feet. She is like, I used to know this person this year. Did you know them? And we were having a conversation about it later, and she said, well, I thought I could say, well, he's dead, but then I thought, well, then there'd be more questions. So I thought maybe I should just say he moved. And so that's what she said. I mean, she's, you know, this poor kid's having to, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but.
And she had to, for
I mean,
almost 2 years, she had to use the nurse's bathroom or the vice principal's bathroom and everything. So when everybody would go to, you know, you're walking down the hall and they said, anybody need to use the bathroom? She would have to go off and then you have to answer those questions and, well, where are you going? And all that stuff. And it just led to...
Yeah, there was even a couple of little girls that tried to blackmail her. You know, we know who you were before, and we'll tell everybody.
Your secret.
Yeah, we know your secret. If you don't, you know, do this for us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to say that shit was wonderful and awesome, and you know, we were lucky in a lot of ways in the fact that I work for the school district, so I know how things work, so I can navigate it a little easier, but also. You know, kids are still going to be, and I honestly think that some of this stuff was teacher and parent supported. You know, they were uncomfortable with it, so they had a lot of things to say, and then their kids came to school and they had a lot of things to say. So it was, you know, it was a rough year or two, you know, but
It's so much better now.
It's so much better now. Yeah.
Can I ask, what would be your suggestions for families and teens, you know, facing similar situation, you know, navigating the system and or supporting your child?
Well, they can always reach out to me. I'll walk them through, because each case is different. I do recommend that that they look to the guidance counselors at first to say, okay, this is what we want, because they need to know that parents support or don't support. I really think that more than anything else, a lot of the school administration get terrified that they will allow a child to do something that the parent doesn't, at least in the high school and the middle school level, certainly. On the elementary school level, it's about outside parents saying something. That's the second fear that they have. So know the laws, what you're allowed to request. And honestly, I'm going to have to be honest with all parents of kids, LGBTQ kids, special needs kids, as well as, not that LGBTQ kids are special needs, but the law is on your side as parents. The law is designed for you to have a free, appropriate public education in any state in this nation. There should be no barriers to your child feeling safe and being educated in any public school. Bottom line, the law is on your side. So if you know that about the law and you make those requests in writing and they do not, then you have a case. Then you can say, you're blocking my child because of, you know, whatever it is, because my child's transgender. And I think once you say those words to the administration, then they realize, oh, yeah, this just got a lot bigger than I realized, you know. And don't ever apologize. That's the other thing I would say for support. Don't ever apologize for loving your child and protecting your child, period.
And as parents, educating yourself is
huge.
Is the biggest thing. Because I was in the Army, and it was, you know, she wanted dolls and stuff like that. Well, I was like, no, I'll get her swim toys or something that wasn't,
Paints, neutral.
yeah, it was more neutral. And then the more you look into it and you see the amount of people, well, and the suicide rate is so high in that community when they don't have the support at home. So it's, you know, you gotta look at it as, I want a daughter that's alive, or I want a son that's dead. You know, you gotta make those decisions, and you gotta stand up for them. But you gotta educate yourself, because there's so much that you just don't understand.
And they depend on you not understanding. They really do. They depend on you not understanding. And it's just like anything else. The legal system, the medical system, I mean, it's, there's language that they use that you're not gonna understand. There's people that they know that are gatekeepers that you're not gonna understand. And it's just a matter of showing up and being there and supporting your child. And surprisingly enough, once you understand the system and that you can say, okay, no, this is the rule right here, I'm reading it, then they'll go, you know, they can't fight the own. You know, and there's a group of parents here called, for younger kids, all the way up through college age, I believe, unless We Are Family goes into a couple of years into college.
25, I think.
Oh, so they go all the way through college, but they have groups split up. We Are Family is a great, one of the first resources that I ran into, and it was a circuitous route that I got there, but they helped so much, at least telling me what the basics were and where I can find the information. That was helpful.
I would like to address the basics that you was talking about. We all know that kids like to experiment. You know, you may have a son that wears your high heels. That doesn't mean he's transgender. You know, you may have a daughter that likes to, you know, saw wood. That doesn't mean she's transgender. But most children between the age of 2 and 5 will come to an understanding of their gender. You cannot force them to be a gender they are not. They may learn to hide it. But if you have a child, if it's persistent, not just occasionally, but if it's persistent, if the child says, I am female, and they were assigned male at birth, or I am male and they were assigned female at birth, then you may have a transgender child. There are rigid steps that the medical profession wants you to follow. The first is see a therapist, one who is familiar with dealing with these issues. And the therapist will tell you, let the child be themselves. If they want to wear dresses, let them wear dresses. If they want to wear pants and climb trees, let them wear pants and climb trees. If they want you to call them by a certain name, call them by that. And that's as far as you go. Just before puberty, if they're still diagnosed with suffering from what they call gender dysphoria, they begin puberty blockers. Basically, that stops the onset of puberty. So, someone born male, their voice will not drop. They won't start growing facial hair. They won't bulk up. A person born female will not develop breast. And at age 16, if they're still suffering from dysphoria, then they are put on hormone therapy. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. That does happen, but the standard is 16 years old. No surgery until they're 18 and able to say for themselves, this is what I want. How many of you have heard of Jazz Jennings? She's on TV and all, came out at the age, 6, I think? Was on Oprah at age 7. She just had surgery, what we call bottom surgery. She's 18. Even she waited until she was of legal age to have surgery. So it's not just something that you jump into overnight and say, okay, you know, you work with your kid. You make sure that they are sure, but you do not destroy them by refusing to recognize who they are. It's not easy, trust me. It is not easy being the parents of a transgender kid, and it's not easy being a transgender kid. like Deidre said, when her daughter had to go to the nurse's bathroom, the kids think, what's so different about her? So she's marked as different from right then and there. So at the school that I worked at, I had this one child who'd been there for 4 years, known me for 4 years, and I've always worn jewelry. Came up to me one day and said, my daddy says men don't wear jewelry. The kid was fine with it until his father taught him. And that's where these children learn it. Children will get along with each other. You know, children aren't born with preconceived notions about other kids. They learn it. It's an acquired thing. The best thing you can do for your child is to teach them to accept everybody. And please let them be kids for as long as they can. Our kids grow up way too early these days.
And just recently, had a friend
Guy,
down
tell
by
his
the judge
story.
with DHEC
Pardon?
had rules in place.
Oh, yeah, Arlen. Arlen is hard of hearing.
I'm really hard of hearing, so, what did she say?
Tell your story.
Oh, okay. So, first I was gonna say, similar to what Leanne said, from what I have understood, children know their gender between age 3 and 5. And when I was little, I was a boy. I mean, I was born assigned female at birth, but when I was a little kid, I was a boy. My parents, I was the older brother of my 2 sisters. Even though I was a girl, I wore boys' clothes, boys' toys. I mean, I was treated like a boy. Everything was great, and then when I hit puberty, I couldn't be a boy anymore. And so I was, kind of makes me feel bad to think of it, but when I was little, I was really outgoing, I was active, I was extroverted, and I shut down about age 12 or 13, and I became a really quiet, withdrawn person the rest of my life for 40 years. And then we didn't have internet, or, I mean, I didn't know about transgender. I didn't know you could, you know, that I could be a boy. I had to be a girl. So that's sort of how I lived my life. And then I think in 2014, I read the book, you know, Sonny and Cher's was daughter, now son, Chaz. So I read that book, and it was like a light went on in my head. And then I started reading a bunch of transgender books, and actually told my mom first before anybody, and she was already a little bit forgetful. Now she doesn't really hardly know me, but anyway, so then in January 2015, I went for my first CATS meeting. I started hormones the end of that month. You know, they always say, oh, you have to wait a year, but the doctor that I went to, he could see, I mean, I was 50, how old was I then? 55, I think. And he could see that this was the way things were going to be. And so he put me right on hormones, testosterone, and then I told people at work in about a month, I told my boss, I thought I had to go get a new job. I'm a physical therapist, and I was like, this isn't good, you know, they're not going to want to keep me here. So, no, everybody was great. They're like, no, we just want you to be happy. And then, like, within about, when you go on testosterone, if you're female, like, things happen really quick. Your voice drops. I started growing facial hair. I mean, I didn't, my old name, a lot of people call it a dead name, and I can't call it that because, I mean, my old name was Ellen, and Ellen got me to where I am. So I have nothing but love for her. So anyway, my name tag said Ellen, and patients were like, look at me and look at Ellen. They're like, what? So we had to quickly change my name, even though I hadn't legally changed it yet. Everybody was on board at work, and the HR was like, yeah, we'll change your name. And so we did that. And let's see, I had my top surgery in March, so 2 months later. And in May, I had a hysterectomy. And by August, I got my, I had to get a lawyer because I didn't understand all the ins and outs. And she, I think she's the head of AFCA now, isn't she, Colleen?
She's the president, I think.
The president. And she, I found out about her, and so I got my name legally changed and my gender legally changed. Then I had to get, I grew up in New York, so I had to get my birth certificate changed. And then about 2 years later, about a year and a half ago, I had bottom surgery. So I've sort of completed most of everything that I wanted to do. Not everybody, when you're transgender, you can be transgender and you cannot take hormones. You cannot have any surgeries at all. Or, you know, if you have dysphoria, like what Leanne was talking about, sometimes, you just don't feel right in your body, so you need to have surgery or things like that. So that's what I did. And as far as my family is really supportive. I've never had any trouble with my sisters are all on board, and work was so supportive. And my HR department made a video about me. I was like the first person at Roper St. Francis to transition. All my patients love me and still come back and see me. They don't care that I'm still the same person. I just look different. And so that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
Yes.
What can we do to help adult friends who are actively and recently transitioning right now? Because I think that well, what I'm seeing is like on Facebook, she'll have a post like where I feel like she's asking for help and support, but somebody will say the wrong thing and it's almost like it just triggers the dysphoria.
Oh, yeah.
What can we do to say, I'm here for you and I'll support you without making it worse?
All you have to do is say, I'm here for you and I support you.
All right, I can do that.
That's not going to make it worse, trust me. I've got some cards over there from the support group.
Okay.
So you can say, contact these people. They do not have to come to a meeting. But I can give them information. I can be there. I can converse with them online. The main thing is, a lot of us feel alone. I did not, like Arlen, I didn't know there was a term transgender until 1996. When a friend of mine who had a computer, who knew I was struggling, sat me down at his computer, and we logged on to Alta Vista. I don't know whether you know. That was the Google of the day. And he had me type in the word transgender. And all of a sudden, my entire life made sense. I knew who I was. And that was a turning point. Now, it took another 20 years for me to finally transition full-time, roughly 20 years. But I did it. And that's just it. There is no right or wrong way to transition. It is what works for that individual. And so, like Arlen said, some will not want bottom surgery, some will not want to go on hormones. 75 to 80% of trans women will not pass or blend. So you will look at them and you will know that person's trans. That's our reality. But we don't want to be in the closet anymore. It's a very dark place. And then when we come out, we don't want to be put in a box. Are you male or are you female? Because we may be a blend of it. Like Arlen said, I'm not going to turn my back on my past. I was a carpenter. I can repair a roof if I need to. I can take up my chainsaw, cut a tree, split the wood, and then go out dancing that night in a dress and high heels. I've actually done that before. But it's, we're a sum of everything that we grew up with. And some people will turn their back on their past. They don't want to have anything to do with it. Some will say, no, I embrace my past. I don't go by my dead name, which is what we call it, and I legally changed my name and gender marker. That cost $1,500. And I had to go to court twice for my gender marker change, because the state was refusing to recognize it when they had recognized it before a certain election happened. And just recently, I had a friend turned down by the judge because DHEC has rules in place. This is what you need to do in order to get your gender marker change. A friend of mine was in court the other day with a DHEC attorney who said, yes, she meets all the requirements we have. The judge refused it because it's not written. Because DHEC will have to send it to the legislature for approval. They will not do that because they're afraid they'll lose their jobs. The judges are afraid that they will lose their jobs because they're appointed by the legislature. So it's, some will go ahead and do it and some will not.
That's not federally,
No,
mandated.
no,
It's
each
by
state, each state. And in some states, no, you can't even amend your birth certificate. That's just too bad. However, there are things you can do. And for instance, my friend was born in Georgia. But if she gets a court ruling here, the only thing she cannot change is her birth certificate. She can go to DMV and get a driver's license that will say female. She can go to
Passport.
Social Security, she can get a passport, all this stuff. But even getting the passport, if you've had one before, you've got to fill out a specific form. We'll have your doctor fill it out in black ink only, and everything has to be done just right.
because Georgia doesn't allow for.
Georgia, well, she lives here, and it's a lot more difficult in Georgia to do it. But if she does it here, she can change everything, you know, Social Security, everything, documents, everything, except the birth certificate. And really, the only reason you need a birth certificate is to apply for a Social Security card, and if you're under 25, to get a marriage license. And then when you die, the funeral home gets it, and which has caused problems before. There have been funeral homes who've refused to deal with a transgender person unless they were able to call them by their assigned gender at birth. And there was a case in Colorado, a trans woman died of a brain aneurysm suddenly, unexpectedly. Legal name change, legal gender change, full surgery, bottom surgery, the works, but she didn't have a will. She was single. She was buried with a crew-cut head in a business suit, and her gravestone has her dead name on it. Because the family was not supportive. As Ross said, the suicide rate is horrendous. The attempted suicide rate for trans children without parental support is close to 50%. You know, we would not deal with that with any other population. With parental support, that drops down to just under 5%, more in keeping with the national average, which is still high. You know, if 5% of our kids are contemplating suicide, something's wrong. And there's a study out of Australia. There's a group that goes around saying, well, 80% of transgender children will do what they call desist. They will, once they hit puberty, well, I'm not trans. There's a study out of Australia that shows that figure is actually 5%. 5% of trans kids will say, who present as trans before puberty, will say, no, I'm not trans. It means 95% stick with it. Because we know who we are. You know, how do you know what gender you are? Close your eyes and think about it. How do you know? You close your eyes, you think, it's instinctive. You just know it. No one has to tell you who you are. It's there. It's the same with us. We know
And
it.
when it matches what where it's a non-issue, really.
Yeah, it's not an issue, but you do know who you are instinctively.
Well, frankly, it's a non-issue if it doesn't for anybody else except for the person who is, I mean, honestly, in any of the problems that, you know, the transgender community encounter, including their own mental health issues, could be alleviated in the majority by reducing the external pressures and, frankly, you know, bull. So, I mean, if you, because it affects anyone else, absolutely zero. Zero, less than zero. It is
Well, and
not affecting anyone else but them.
when we changed our daughter's, legally changed her name, she was born in Texas. So we had to send paperwork to Texas to get her birth certificate changed, which they wouldn't change the marker, that'll happen, hopefully. But I had to send the paperwork in 4 times.
Could get
And-
lost.
Well, and exactly, and it just depends on if it goes to the wrong person's desk, that's like, well, I don't agree with this, well, suddenly it's lost.
Oh, man.
So, and you don't know that for sure, but to have to send it 4 times and finally get to somebody's desk that's like, yes, this is fine, and they did it. But that's some of the issues, and you know, the fears that you don't even think about is she's young enough now that we don't have to worry about her going to jail for some reason or something like that. But if she would, you know, be 16, 17, 18 and end up being arrested, they could stick her in the male population, and that would be awful for her. So, you know, there's things that you look at, but the fear is just always there.
You know, we've had other parents that we've kind of watched them very closely go through these things like tests and make sure that, you know, the test and the number that if I'll give you an example, a weird example. She's really interested in her ancestry, so we got one of those 23andMe kits, right? So you can see where I'm going to go with this, right? Okay, so we sent the test off. I marked all of the boxes female, and I knew, probably being a science teacher, how this was going to go, but I wasn't. She was watching me, and I support her completely, and she is a girl, so I hit the female, and then so I got an email probably about 3 weeks later that says, did someone spit in the wrong cup? Because we, you know, and I'm like, nope, that's exactly the way it was. And I am not kidding you. 23andMe sent me an email immediately that said, can you tell us more about this? Is this a transgender person? How can we better, you know, quantify our forms? How can we do better on the end? I was very impressed, you know. So, you know, things that you don't think of, college dormitory rooms. You know, that you're going to get, you know, flagged if the stupid gender marker is on the, and down here, they're a little bit more, you know, this isn't California where you have co-ed dorms as frequently as, you know, so if she chooses to go to school here. So it comes up constantly, naggingly, this idea that gets in the way of their living, you know, and it's someone else's idea. It's not her idea. It's all this stuff out here, which is probably the most frustrating.
Can you not get the designation changed in Texas because you're living?
No, they yeah.
Well, we
could
haven't
get
been able
an
to do it here
amendment.
yet.
Yeah, we could get an amendment, but Texas is one of those states that won't change the original document. It'll only say an amendment, and then they have got these stringent surgical requirements, which again is ridiculous. $1,500 to get a name change. I'm in charge of the GSA, which is Gay Straight Alliance at my high school, and these kids, their parents, they can't, you know, they're too good to, you know, put clothes on these kids' backs and food in the refrigerator and keep a roof over their heads. Asking them to spend $1,500 is, I mean, it's almost impossible. You're talking about, you know, a situation that would throw a family in a loop for, I don't understand. It really is infuriating to me. I mean, that's not always the case. There are some lawyers who will take it pro bono, but surgery might be a complete non-issue. They don't want surgery, or it's a monetary issue. They certainly couldn't afford surgery.
For me, bottom surgery would be minimum of $20,000 and 6 weeks off of work. For a trans man, how much was your surgery?
Well, my insurance doesn't cover it, so I had to go out of the country because it was cheaper. If I had it here, it would have been at least 50 grand. So I think I paid, well, I probably paid $12,000, but then I got complications, so I'm going to be paying for several years for the fixing that I had done. So, oh yeah, if I added up all I've spent all along, it's a lot of money. Yeah. That's why most people, I mean, I'm older and have a job and stuff, but some of the younger folks can't, I mean, they can't afford it, you know. It's not they don't want it, but I think they say 10% of trans men have bottom surgery, and that's, a lot of them can't afford it probably.
Yeah, about 20% of trans women have it. Most can't afford it. I could have my vocal cords operated on to lower my voice. That's about $10,000.
To lower?
To lower, to raise it, excuse me.
Oh.
Yeah, to change it, shall we
Yeah.
say. I could have
How much?
about 10,000, 8 to 10,000. And there's no guarantee what you'll sound like. You could come out sounding like a cartoon character. They
Does
just
it
don't
bother
know.
you?
It does on some occasions, like drive-throughs, the phone, you know, at work even, when I'm
Because
talking.
of other people, not because of...
Yeah, not because of me. My wife finds my voice sexy, so.
Lauren
You
McCall.
said those-
Yeah.
Some of the best.
But, and then there's facial feminization surgery. And you can spend $200,000 easy on that. You know, to make your face more feminine. They can shave your jawline, they can move your eyes around, give you nice prominent cheekbones. And then there's the cosmetic surgery to increase the size of your butt, broaden your hips, and there's all kinds of stuff. And like Arlen said, most of us can't afford that. There have been several trans women who have died from people injecting silicone that they bought at the hardware store to increase the size of their butts and all. That has happened because people can't afford. And unfortunately with our society, think about what you see on TV in the ads, especially when it comes to women. You know, a lot you see them just from the neck down. You don't even see the face. It's all about how you look. It's all about appearance. And so for us, we will try and look the gender that we feel we are. And let's talk bathrooms. That's always a fun topic. Who would you rather see in the women's room with you, myself or Arlen? Think about that. And how would you know that Arlen was transgender? Ask for his birth certificate? You know, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I'd much rather share the bathroom with someone who I knew was transgender than take the risk of having somebody in there who you don't know. And I could show you pictures of trans women who you would share the bathroom with, you'd probably gossip with, you wouldn't care, and you had no clue they're transgender. And there are people like me.
Oh, I have something to say about the bathrooms. Okay, everybody who's in here is female. When you go in the bathroom, like we all talk to each other and say hi and stuff like that. They don't do that in the men's room. The men's room is so weird, okay? Like, you go in there and you go in your, don't look at anybody. Because they might think you're gay and trying to pick them up. So you, blinders, you go in, go to the bathroom, turn around, go out, wash your hands. Don't look at anybody. Don't look in the mirror because you might be looking at them. It's so weird. They don't sit there and talk and put on makeup and talk to each. It's like totally different. You have to learn how to do the bathroom to go in the men's bathroom.
Yeah, think about that. Society has us programmed to act certain ways. So we have to relearn everything that we grew up with to a certain extent, you know. I mean, you know, Arlen's right. I mean, I grew up male, and I know not to sit on a man's toilet. I'm sorry. I work construction, you know. I know what it's like, you know. But, and my work for Costco, I do what they call maintenance, which involves a lot of cleaning up after people. So I'll go into the women's room, and I announce myself.
Oh, and men's bathrooms are
Not necessarily.
not as clean.
Not necessarily. But I will go in and I'll be, you know, changing the paper towel holders or changing the soap or something. And women come in and I say, I'm just in here doing this, and they'll go into the stall. I've only had one woman say, oh, well, I can't use it as long as you're in here. Because I don't pass. You know, my voice sounds different.
But nothing's happening in the ladies' room.
Nothing's
We're all in a
happening.
little
Yeah,
box.
you have stalls, you guys,
Well, that's-
you know, but it is how we are taught, how we are programmed by our society to view each other. And I've also heard the stories about, well, men will pretend to be transgender.
It's so ridiculous.
What does that say about men? You know, what are we saying about men? Saying, well, you know, they have such a low opinion of women that they're going to try and take advantage of them by pretending to be a woman.
No, all the good guys out there should be really hacked off at the way that they think that you're stupid savages. I would be angry if I was, you know, a loving husband and son and father, and you know, I would be really angry at the picture that they paint of, because there's a lot of good guys out there, and here they've got you, you know, doing all sorts of mayhem, which is just not true.
Well, and that's always, and the thing that irritated me is that it's always been illegal to do that anyway. So nothing really changed on that.
Nope.
So
Sometimes it's like, I don't know where all of this, I don't know how we generate all this fear, this invisible boogeyman that don't exist, you know, and we let this fear rule our lives, and in reality, we're missing all the opportunities to know wonderful, loving, courageous as hell people. Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I mean, really, they're phenomenally brave individiversity. And I preach to my students all the time, diversity is protective. It's the only thing that's going to save the human species, is this diversity. The more diversity that we have, the safer we are. And, you know, to me, I'm hoping that my kids get it programmed in their head that, oh, that's different. Doesn't mean, oh, that's bad. It's mean, oh, that's different. That's got a purpose somewhere. There is no form without function. I truly believe that too. So we're just not able to see it yet. So.
but the bathroom situation, when that happened, showed us a lot of people's true colors. We had a lot of support from a lot of people that because we let people know that Grace was transitioning and this was going on, and everybody was supportive. But then when all the different bathroom issues things came up, and with social media, you know, everybody's brave on Facebook or whatever, you find out the true colors. And I lost family members because they're very religious, and God doesn't make mistakes, and we received all that.
And he lost most of his family members, like, you know, and so did I. So let's not, I mean, it was really hard.
Who had all been very supportive. They're so lucky to have you as parents, and she's so lucky to, you know, that whole thing. But then when it came to just say, you know, we support you in what you're doing, because we were going before the Senate, we were doing different things. I told them that they were afraid that their friends would know, so they wouldn't say anything. And then you get in the arguments and that stuff, and you know, they say, well, we still love you, we still do this and that, and we came back with, you know, you can't tell us that you love her and you love them and then say she's going to hell.
That's really not how that works. No. I mean, I don't know. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
So.
And if someone confides in you that they're transgender, don't tell anybody else, even a close friend. That's up to them to do. They have confided in you something that's deep and personal. The same way you would not want them to tell something about you that you confided in them, don't do it. Because that can devastate them. They can lose their job. They can lose their family. In South Carolina, there are no protections for LGBTQI people. Unlike there are for people's religious beliefs, race, all that stuff. We have marriage equality, but a person can go out and marry their same gender partner on Sunday, come to work on Monday, and be fired for doing that. Perfectly legal in the state of South Carolina, and perfectly legal in quite a few states. I think it's 17 states have laws protecting LGBTQI people. 33 do not, to one extent or the other. Some have partial. So be an ally. Even if you don't understand, be a friend. Because we need them.
And
We
vote.
live, you know.
Well, and I'll back to the younger kid situation. I think it was a little bit more tricky what Leanne
Yeah.
said about not revealing someone's status, transgender status, or even their sexuality. Or that was hard for our child's brothers to understand. Well, one in particular was really close in age, and you know, it was very important. It's not your information to tell. It's not your story to tell. You tell your story and let her tell hers. You know, that this could put her in a situation where you won't be there, I won't be there, Dad won't be there to kind of navigate it. So you have to be respectful and you have to be careful. So that was a long discussion that we had at the whole sibling thing, I think was a lot trickier, I think, honestly, than for us to come to terms with who she is. That was a walk in the park, kind of the whole sibling and navigating the, you know, that was a little bit trickier.
I saw a great thing the other day that kind of describes what being transgender is. Imagine going to the store and you buy a can of peas. You take it home, you open it, and there are carrots inside. There's nothing wrong with the label.
Nothing wrong with carrots.
There's nothing wrong with the carrots. They just don't happen to agree.
That's right.
And that's what being transgender is. It's not a mistake. It's not something that needs to be corrected. It's something that needs to be understood, to be accepted. It doesn't mean you have to invite us over for dinner, although I'll take any dinner invitation.
Except for mine, because I don't cook.
You know, but,
Yeah, for sure. I'll lend you my kitchen.
but, you know, don't pass us on the street and give us sideways glances. You know, in the course of my being out, I have been spit at, I have been yelled at, I have been threatened, I have had my breasts grabbed twice to see whether they were real. They are. So don't do any of that. That's just, you know.
Yeah, what are the ways that we can all support? I know at the last panel, there was something really interesting, because usually a lot of us will stand up for other people in a community. But there was talk about there's certain situations where if somebody is transgender, you want to not have them necessarily interact with the police because they might end up having to go to jail and how awful that can be. So just talk a little bit about what we can do, but then if there is, because recently there was in the news someone, you know, beat up somebody downtown, and but if you're around that situation, most of us would stand up for somebody, but you know, realistically, what do we need to be doing?
All right. Let's say you're at work and someone tells a homophobic or transphobic joke. You don't have to confront them, because depending on the person, that can be dangerous for you. But you can say something as innocent as, I just want you to know that you're talking to somebody who doesn't agree with that position, or who, you know, I don't find that funny, and leave it. You don't have to confront, because like I said, that can place you in a dangerous situation, because you don't know, some of these people are very adamant about their beliefs. And just be an ally, be a friend. Take the cue from the trans person. You know, if they want to kind of hide, accept that. Because you don't know what their home life is. In the support group, we have a member, I've never met her. I probably never will. She's in the closet, deep in the closet, because of her family and her job. She can't come out. She's never been to a meeting. But we converse every couple of months. And I respect that. I could find out who she really is, but I'm not going to do that. This is her story. This is her life. And it's not up to me to dictate how she should live it. And that's true for anybody. You know? You don't want to go up to somebody and say, well, I don't like that food you're eating. I mean, why? You know, we don't judge people based on, most people don't judge people based on who they are, and we shouldn't. You know, we shouldn't judge them on what they wear, how they look, how they talk. I'm sure, how many of you were born in the South? Oh, we got 3 or 4 of us. And how many of you born in the South cringe when you hear the Southern accent in movies?
Me too.
You know, this is stereotyping people, so don't do it to us. You know, we aren't all Laverne Cox. We're not all Caitlyn Jenners. You know, we're people like you, individuals, with our likes and our dislikes. Arlen and I share being trans, share love of dogs. Arlen may not love dogs as much as we do. We have 17 adopted stray dogs. So, yeah.
I don't like possums as much as you do.
Yeah. We do have a pet possum who lives in the house and takes naps on the couch.
Oh, you only have one now?
Just one now, yeah.
I thought you had like 3.
No, no.
Oh,
But-
I wanted to say one
Yeah.
thing.
Go
I don't
ahead.
know if we brought this up. Does everybody know what stealth is? Stealth, so there's a couple guys that used to be in our CATS group who have gone stealth. They're trans men and they're married or with their partner, and they have a job where no one knows and nobody you would never know that they were trans. And that's okay too. Some people just go stealth and they wouldn't be sitting up here with us because they present as male and don't want anyone to know they were trans, that they were ever assigned female. So that's what stealth is. And there's probably a fair amount, I don't know what the percentage is, but, you know.
Well, for trans men, the vast majority will go stealth. Because they can. I mean, look
We
at
pass
Arlen.
quick. As soon as we get a little testosterone, you would never know.
You would never know.
So-
For trans women, it's different. You know, for most of us, stealth is not an option.
Well, and it depends on the age, because like
Yeah.
look at Jazz Jennings.
The younger you are,
Because
the
she
younger they
had
transition.
puberty blockers, so she never was exposed to testosterone. So she really, I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah.
I suppose
I
she
mean,
could go stealth.
so the younger they transition, the more they will appear like the gender they identify with. And I use gender in a broad sense. I'm not trying to say binary, male, female, just as the gender. So if the child is born female and transitions at an early age, they don't have to have the top surgery. Their voice will change. Now, I went through puberty. Arlen went through puberty twice. Once as a female, the second time as a male, which literally is what the testosterone will do, is it will start you on a second puberty. There is a group in the Dominican Republic where female at birth, they hit puberty, all of a sudden they develop testicles and gonads. You know, so human sexuality, human gender is a broad spectrum.
So would they be intersex?
It's a whole different thing. They don't even go, I mean, you know, scientists are still trying to figure out why it happens. You know, but intersex is a whole, being transgender and being intersex are 2 different things. But you can be intersex and be transgender.
Yes.
Intersex means that your genitalia does not fit the standards, the norms, and it gets a whole range of them. And you can have females that have male genitalia.
So are you saying like if you like went to like the chemistry level, they test as female but have male?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are
And
so many.
intersex
Yeah.
people, there are as many intersex people in the world as there are redheads.
It's
Yeah.
very common.
Think about that. And it's in all different, you know, you can have what they call a micro penis. You know, that is intersex. You can be insensitive to androgens.
He's being Ross, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, so there is a, you know, and the intersex group, a lot of them go stealth, is what they call it, you know, because society will look at them like freaks. They're freaks. I mean, you know.
Traditionally, those people were, someone decided, a doctor decided when they were born to make them male or female. And those people can have terrible problems later on because maybe the hormones or the brain feels that it's female or male, and they were, you know, this doctor made a choice for them, and now they try not to do that. They wait till the kid is, what, 3, 5, however old they are, and then the parents and the child, let the child decide what sex they're gonna be. Don't like mutilate them at birth, and I've read some books about it, it's just really terrible.
There are 2 countries in the world where it is illegal to operate on an intersex child.
Well, South Carolina got sued. South Carolina got sued because the social worker and the doctor decided that this baby that was in foster care was one gender based on this intersex condition. They're frequently chosen female because that is just the easiest direction to go, and they're worried that this, you know, if the baby was male, it would be this horrible, you know, thing, you know, where females they'll deal with it, right? So South Carolina got sued because the doctor that was in the foster care system took this foster care child and with an intersex condition and made them female. And when the child grew up, absolutely without a doubt said, I am male and I should have been left as I was. Sued and won. There's an article called Sex Redefined. It's in Nature magazine. I know you guys at the library, so y'all must like research. And I would be willing to bet you that in Nature magazine, probably your librarian can find it for you. It's a fantastic read that kind of helps define what they call DSD, which is called disorders of sex development, which is very common, and it can be chromosomal, it can be a small chromosomal issue or big. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, that's biological sex. Gender is something completely different. Sexuality is a third thing that's completely different, and they are not locked together. They move independently of one another. So you can have an intersex individual who's transgender and gay. You can have a cisgender person who has intersex and in a heterosexual relationship. They are not locked together. So you got to consider those complexities about a human. Again, diversity is what makes life so beautiful, so, and chaotic. Yeah.
What advice would you give young transgender people about building their support system so that they stay physically and mentally healthy as they're transitioning to adulthood?
You mean young people as in elementary and middle school age, or young people as in college
well, I guess
age?
It's going to be a little bit for each. I mean,
Young adults.
when we have the younger kids, they can't really build their own system. We're having to build the system for them. But I feel like as they get older, they don't always care as much about what we're trying to do. They're building their own system. So I guess I'm talking, you know, high school and up.
I think one of the first things that I was concerned about with our daughter was teaching her to trust her instincts. Those inner feelings that she got when she felt like she was not so safe. And those are the same types of internal clues and instincts that she's going to need when someone is being a good friend or a good person to her on a smaller scale. So I told her, these are the things that you do if you are in a situation and you feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and you feel kind of sick to your stomach and you don't know what to say and everything is wrong. You know, these are the things you can do to protect yourself. So
is she your only daughter?
She's our only daughter. No, I mean, I have 2 older siblings. She has 2 older brothers.
Right, but she's your only daughter. Because I'm hearing you say that, and I'm going, well, you're just talking about what we have to teach our daughters.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not
exactly.
It's teaching our daughters, but even more so with my youngest daughter is black.
Right.
And so even more so, I'm finding having to teach her And I'm just amazed at some of the stuff I hear coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, but I have to say it to her.
Right.
Or I'm doing her a disservice.
That's exactly right.
But sorry, go on.
No. So and then as she starts to encounter new friends and make friends, I've told her to use those instincts. If you feel like someone is not being a true friend, if they are doing something to hurt your feelings, they don't know how to say they're sorry, they're using you, then you need to move away from them. Like people have a tendency to group together. It wasn't very long in any class that she had that she would find a couple or 3 friends, you know, that kind of knew her before or whatever, and that would stick together with her, right? And their parents are also usually pretty supportive and whatnot. And I think more than anything, with supportive parents and a couple of supportive friends at home, and then just continuing to live your life and I've tried to, you know, this is normal activities. This is what we do. We go out to eat. We do all of these normal things and encounter new people and make new friends. Then people who know her, and even if outside influences start to say, oh, you're friends with so-and-so, I find that her friends will say, and, you know, what is your problem? You know, she's been my friend forever, you know. You apparently are not. So, I mean, you know, so I would encourage, you know, just kind of an ability to check in on yourself on, is this safe? Is this okay? And then continuing to do normal things, going out and finding things that you enjoy. Finding a group that's supportive is always helpful, but We Are Family was not, I mean, it's been around for 20 years now, I think. Yeah. But these kids are, you know, like any other of this generation, they're transient. They're going to leave. They're going to go to other places. Hopefully there'll be other support groups there that can have group activities, get out and meet people. You know, don't self-isolate. It's very tempting, especially after everything fell apart with the bathroom and all that other stuff. A few years ago, it was real easy for us to be on, you know, transparent island and burn all these. I mean, it was very easy for us to isolate ourselves. But we felt like we would do more damage, you know, not being a representative and not staying and doing the normal stuff and saying our piece.
And it really hasn't been as hard for her now that she's in a different school and is more comfortable and she's accepted by most people. The groups and everything, I think, have been better for us because you're able to be around parents that are going through the same things that you are.
Right.
And I think it's been good for me to be able to be in groups where we're able to tell them, okay, this is what you can do for your child. We've already gone through it. And the more you do that, the better you feel about the situation you're in. Because you're helping and being able to do stuff like this just to get the knowledge out there. Because there's some people that it doesn't matter, they're not going to listen. And the people that will open up and they'll want to learn, it's liberating.
Like you.
It's, you know, you go out there and you're able to give the information, and in everything, it's going to make her life easier because there's more and more and more
That's
accepting people
Right.
out there now.
So we build networks by, I guess, talk as parents for us to talk and you know, explain and help people understand. And then on her inner network, just the same stuff that she would have to do to keep herself safe in any other situation, the same stuff that she would have to do to learn how to make good friends and to tell the difference from friends, and to, you know, help her understand it's okay to lose those people that are toxic to you. You know, it doesn't say anything about you and your worth. They're just not where you're at right now. And it's not your job to get them there. You know, she's got to live her life and do her thing and, you know, and keep walking. And surprisingly, I mean, there's always been 2 or 3 people that will, as many people as show their true colors, which I'm actually very grateful for, because if you're a hidden homophobe, it makes it kind of hard for me to tell whether or not, you know. So if you're just blatantly homophobic, out of here, you know. I don't have to hesitate, but you know. So there's always been those 2 or 3 people who have, without a doubt, they've come forward. When we had an article in the paper, I got cards from teachers in our district that I didn't I didn't even know that said, you know, thank you. One of Grace's gym teachers, do you remember that? Came to Triangle, and we were sitting there eating dinner, and she walked over and she said, do you know how long I have wanted to meet you guys? And it was amazing, you know. So you always got people that maybe they don't every day tell you that, but they're there. They're there. And if you can teach your kid to have faith in that they're there, those people that are your allies are there. And if we as allies can never hesitate to stand up for what is right, then the world's going to be a better place, I promise.
One of the things that trans people experience is gender dysphoria. They're not comfortable with their body, and their mind don't sync, and that causes dysphoria. The opposite of that is gender euphoria, and it's more common in adults than in children. For instance, when I came out, it was like, here I am, world. I did not think about the effect it was going to have on my family. I was not married, but you know, my siblings, my job, anything of that. I didn't think about it. I was just so happy to be me. But that's something we need to think about. We need to think, stop, wait. It's called transition for a reason. It doesn't happen overnight. But just like we transition, our family, our friends have to transition too. You know, because they may have, you know, I have friends who knew me for 60 years as somebody else. And all of a sudden, I expect them overnight to know me as Leanne. No, that's not going to happen. There will be mistakes. You will misgender somebody. Don't dwell on it. Correct yourself and move on. Don't gush and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I really didn't mean to do, oh my God, I don't know. No, just say, oh, I'm so, you know, call, you know, look at me and say, and point to a friend and say, well, he, oh, I mean she, and just go on. Don't worry about it. The bigger deal you make of it, the worse it's going to hurt us. You know, so we're all human. Someone once said to err is human. You know, to forgive divine, but we're going to make mistakes. I even make mistakes with people I've known for years who are transgender because I knew them before. And so it happens. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it, because we're not going to stress about it as long as you don't do it on purpose. It's when you do it on purpose that really gets to us. It really hurts when somebody looks at you knowing you're transgender and misgenders you. You know, that is like a knife to the heart.
Did you have a question too, or no?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm not sure how to say it without sounding like a jerk, sort of, but I'm from California, so I wonder if, did you make a conscious decision to stay here? When it's, could be so much easier. I mean, I'm glad you're here. Right. People need to be fighting, you know? Yeah. But I feel like I'd be so like it's so weird here. I would just be so tempted to go where it is easier.
Oh, sure. We've looked.
Oh, no,
we still look.
we
look. We thought, you know, we still look. I mean,
you shouldn't have to.
No.
But I just.
But we're
wonder
caught.
if you-
I mean, I will tell you this. The day after the last election, I did go and get Grace and our passports. The day after. So I got that done, and then, you know, the boys later, and we still, I mean, you know, there's still threats on the horizon. I'm sure you guys have been keeping up with the news, this new thing that's coming out that is absolutely horrifying to the trans community. Yes, so after the first year, I thought, you know, I gotta stay, and what kind of person would if I leave the whole community and not fight, you know, and how bad, and I've already won this one battle here with this school district. Do I want to go to another area? What if I run into another? I guess my granny always said the devil you know is better than the one you don't. So, but at the same time, I'm an only child of a single parent mom, so mom too, I had to take that into account. My husband is in congestive heart failure, so I had a lot of other things.
And this is my home.
Yeah.
I grew up here. My roots go back to 1695, you know? I'm not gonna be chased away. You know, I'm staying. Besides, moving 17 dogs, a possum.
Yeah. Leonis
I mean,
have a beautiful
and-
place too.
And think
so-
about Deidre's other children.
Yep.
Are you gonna uproot them and pull them out, or are you gonna say no? And I don't blame someone for moving.
Right.
I have friends who've moved. You know, I don't blame them. Because they're doing what they consider best for themselves.
Well, and the other thing that we kind of found, I mean, there's all the surveys and everything you can read that this state is more accepting, this is, you know, you can do that.
Yeah.
But everywhere you're gonna go,
Yeah.
you're not guaranteed
Yeah.
who your neighbors are gonna
Yeah.
be, or,
Yeah.
you know, so up and moving, like, you could go into a worse situation. But we did look, and we've looked at, you know,
We regularly
Europe
reevaluate
or
the risk.
something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like having any other, you know, I would reevaluate the risk if I had a child with, you know, any needs that I thought a state could provide or put my kid in direct danger, even indirect danger, you know, I do. You always evaluate the risk. There's a lot of factors going into it. So we're here because we ended up retiring here, and then she told us who she was here, and so we started the fight here, and we won here. So at this point, that's why we're still here, is because, and she told me, I'm not even gonna lie to you, she told me we were taking a week off to go to Universal. We've been paying on this vacation forever, so it's not, we're not going. But she was like, I'm gonna miss so much school. I love school. I don't know, you know. I'm like, you're complaining because you're gonna. I'm just gonna repeat this. You're complaining because you're gonna miss school to go to Universal, and I'm kind of happy on one side, and I'm like, what on the other? So that's why we're.
Because we had a couple of years where it was awful for her to go to school.
Yeah, but yeah, it was rough.
And it was hard on us and everything, and that's, you know,
Nobody's living
she's the bravest kid in the world to get up and go to school every day.
every day.
And now she loves it. So,
I mean,
you know,
I've
some of
met
those
grown
battles we
men.
fought and now we're,
Yeah, I've met grown men that I've never seen anything that a grown man would shrink from a little girl. She has more guts in every day when she gets up and goes out that door and goes to school than some of these, you know, grown men that wear suits in the Senate. And you know what I said to myself? I can be as brave as her.
You're such a beautiful mom.
I'm just a mom, and I think you would do it too.
well,
I
and some
can
of
be
the,
as brave as her. That's my goal.
and some of the things that are hard that one of the things you don't think about as a parent is that when she transitioned, she grew her hair down to the middle of her back
Yeah, it was going on.
and could pass, you know, you walked into a classroom, you would not pick her out. Well, people move into our neighborhood, they play outside, she gets invited over to stay. So then you have to go over and pull those parents aside
What
and
if?
say, okay, here's the situation. Because you know, if she falls down the stairs or it's something at their house, they need to know that
What
because
if?
it, and
Because
so that conversation is awful, because you don't know how the parents are gonna react. And then that night she stayed over, she came home at midnight.
She called me, she said, I'm on my way. Luckily, it was like 2 doors, so I just walked out to the sidewalk and met her,
But she just,
she trusted that gut. I told her, I was like, if you feel like it's not working, you don't ever feel guilty. I don't care where I'm at, what time it is. You call me.
which is
I'm gonna
really,
get you.
really bad, but you know, it's there was just a little bit too much religion in that house. And I don't think they ever said anything or
No.
did anything or pressured her at all.
No.
But I think, like you say,
Just-
her gut was,
I'm-
this is not where I wanna be.
I can't, you know.
That was gonna be my question, was about the religious community and how, if you all interact within that. I mean, not trans, I just am not religious.
Right.
But I have a spirituality, but I just was wondering, it seems to me that in today, the way things are, the Christians are so, I just, it's a lot of hypocrisy, and I was just wondering how you deal with that.
I'm an atheist. I'll be out there and be honest with you. I don't begrudge anyone their faith. They can believe anything they want as long as they don't tell me that you're wrong in what you don't believe in. I grew up in the Episcopal Church. I was an acolyte. I was a crucifer. I was a lay reader. I was senior warden of my church, which means that I was head of the vestry. But it was the Episcopal Church. And Bishop Gene Robinson, how many of you know who he is? Nobody, okay. Bishop Gene Robinson was nominated to be the Bishop of Massachusetts. He was openly gay. That is how the conservatives described him. We cannot have an openly gay bishop. It was okay if he stayed in the closet, but to be open about it, that was a sin. It literally split the Episcopal Church in half. You had churches leaving the national church because of this. And my faith was never real strong. I was not one to, go out, but that was kind of the final straw. That if my faith couldn't accept a man who'd been a minister, and yet, because he said, "This is who I am," you're going to turn your back on them. It wasn't hurting anybody. And so, but yet I have trans friends who are very religious. And that's fine for them. I think there are like 8 churches in the Charleston area where I would feel comfortable walking through their door. We call ourselves a holy city because of all the churches. It's not because of the potholes, it's because of the churches. But there are only 8 that I feel comfortable walking into. There may be more, but I don't know about them. And just like I wouldn't walk into a strange bar on Rivers Avenue, I'm not going to walk into a church because I don't know how I'll be received. And speaking of churches, on November 15th at 7 p.m. at the Unitarian Church in Charleston, which if you've never been inside, you've got to see that interior. It is the most beautiful interior of a church in Charleston. We'll be having the Transgender Day of Remembrance, in which we remember those who lost their lives because of their gender identity. We've actually had 3 this year from South Carolina. 2 were killed in this state, 1 was killed in Florida. And come and see, come and listen. We have a broad spectrum of transgender individuals who will be speaking. We have the Muslim mother of a genderqueer youth who will be speaking. A trans woman from the Philippines. We have a deaf trans man speaking. See, we run the gauntlet. It's a non-denominational service. It's secular, basically. Because if you've ever been to the Unitarian Church, it's a wonderful church to go to. And if we didn't live so far out in the country and have so many animals, we'd probably go to that church. But yeah, for me, I lost my faith when I came out. Because I knew I could still go to my little church, but I'd make other people uncomfortable. And that's one thing that trans people do. They try not to intrude upon other people's spaces. That is changing, though, because we're fed up. We don't want to hide.
I got you.
Yeah. How about you, Arlen? Are you religious or?
I'm religious, but I don't have a church here.
Yeah.
I was raised Lutheran, and so I still have a church at home, which I, don't get there once, twice a year, but.
So in other words, he's like most Christians. You go to church on Easter and Christmas.
Well, and I had a brother and sister-in-law that are very big in their church that they're the ones that said God doesn't make mistakes, God doesn't do this. And it was hard for me because when all this stuff starts to happen and you know that there's going to be those people out there, and I kind of had a feeling that that was going to be their decision with it, is that I did research. I looked into it. You know, they won't do the research. They won't look at anything. And it ends up that so often they're called cafeteria Christians because they pick and choose what they want, but then ignore everything else. And when you bring up other things in the Bible that say, no, it is accepting and that stuff, and they always try to tell me that, well, I try to live as Jesus lived and love everyone. Well, I said, you know, if you look up Jesus' love in the Bible, nowhere does it say accept. It's everything, you know, but they say, you know, the Bible says man can't live with another, or lay with another man. Well, it also says you can't eat shellfish. And you can't get tattoos. You can't, I mean, there's a lot of things that are in there, and it's all in one area, but they just picked that one. And you get you're taking it out of context. Well, you're taking it out of context. But they use that about the gay marriage. You know, it was hard, and they didn't want to fight about it, and mainly because I felt that they were losing. And I told, you know, they said, well, that's just the way we believe. I said, well, you know, your faith is one thing, but your beliefs are something that do change. And they go, no, our beliefs don't change. And I said, well, when you were growing up, everybody had Sunday clothes that they wore to church. You wore your Sunday best. Now everybody goes in flip-flop shorts and a polo shirt. That belief changed. Blacks and white couldn't go to the same church. That belief changed. Women couldn't have jobs in the church. That belief changed. So you can change your belief, but you're choosing not to.
When I grew up, women actually wore veils to church. They wear hats and they pull the veil down over when they enter the church.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that since the 1960s, you know? So religion has to change with the times. If it doesn't, it becomes stagnant and it will disappear. Because
we can only hope. No,
yeah.
I appreciate it. I think religion and science live in two different realms. That's how I teach it. If science is not relevant unless you have data to back it up. So you have to have evidence for science to make any statement. Faith is the exact opposite. You have to make a statement and you believe it without any evidence, consistently and constantly. And I think so they live in two different places in your brain. I also, because I struggled with religion for many decades before I even had children, and I finally just decided to be who I was and say, it ain't working for me. So I'm not religious. I don't have faith. And I find that the reaction, it's so funny, when I tell people that I'm an atheist, they're like, oh no, you're very spiritual. Like I just told them I'm sick or something. I don't understand that. Sometimes I'm like, no, really, and it's okay, you know. I personally think, because I was raised in the church, that Jesus was probably a radical inclusionist. A radical inclusionist. He sought the people that no one else wanted to include in.
Don't turn their backs on the least among us. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank you so much for coming out and talking today. Just amazing, amazing people. I'm just grateful to be here today and to learn from you all. And for you guys for coming out.
You all have been wonderful.
Thank
by the
you.
way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Some of the CATS cards are